Hi there, I discovered kefir a few months ago and it really has changed my life. I have IBS and lots of bloating, very uncomfortable at times, but since having kefir, I've really noticed a huge difference and my stomach feels more settled and it's really changed my life. So I'd like to show you how to make kefir. So when I initially bought kefir, it was in a packet like this. There were some few grains in here. So I had to take it out, put it into a jar. You don't need a lot. You'd be surprised how quickly the kefir grains will grow with a bit of love and care. So transfer the kefir grains into the jar, clean jar. I'm using some milk. I tend to use organic semi-skim milk, or I just use filtered milk. Some people use raw milk, which is great too. Kefir grains are a combination of yeast and good bacteria. There can be up to more than 30 different types of good bacteria in here that will only just improve your stomach flora, increasing the number of good bacteria in there and helping settle your stomach. So I will just pour some milk into the jar, clean jar with the kefir grains. The idea is that you pour until you get to the top but not completely full, because you need to leave space for the fermentation to happen. So I'll stop there. And then you will need, I've used the muslin cloth that I've just cut up into a square. I'm going to put on top because there needs to be breathing space for the fermentation of the bacteria to happen. And then get an elastic band and put that on top. And that will just sit on your counter for about 12 to 24 hours. In warmer weather, you wouldn't have to let the bacteria ferment the milk for more than 12 hours, but in the winter times, it will go up to 24 hours. And that will just go onto the counter, not the fridge, will go onto the counter in a cool place and be left there for a good 12 hours to 24 hours, depending on your room temperature. And then I've got here some kefir, because the milk has now turned into kefir by the magic of these amazing grains that have actually fermented the milk for 12 hours. And you know when the milk kefir is ready because you'll have some bubbles at the bottom and you'll also have some curds at the top. We tend to not let separation happen. If you were to ferment for too long, separation will happen where you'll see whey, curds and whey, which we don't really want. So you have to keep looking and checking if there's little bubbles at the bottom, and there's the top, there'll be some whey. So this has been out on my counter for 12 hours, not 24 hours, 12 hours. So I'll take that off. Now it's really important to use plastic equipment unless you have stainless steel equipment, because if you use non-stainless steel equipment, sometimes the grains will react with the metals, which are acidic and could be dangerous, which we don't want. So stick to plastic utensils, wood or stainless steel. So I've got a plastic sieve here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a new clean jar, and I'm going to take the sieve and put it on top and pour it out into the jar. Now the idea is that you always sieve out the milk, so you get the fresh fermented milk, and you should be left with the grains. And when you sieve, you will see some, you can see at the bottom of this jar, there's still some bubbles at the bottom, and that's great because that shows good sign of fermentation, which you can actually just using, I tend to use a chopstick, and the reason I choose a chopstick is it gets out all the grains and I don't miss anything. So I'll just do that quickly. But even if you were to leave some, it wouldn't matter, because you'll put the grains back in this jar and you'll start the fermentation process again. Okay, and then the idea is you just sieve out as much of the fermented milk as possible and you'll be left with just the grains. And the magic of these grains is when I first started, they just looked like rice grains, but now they become almost like little cauliflower florets. And you can be, don't be afraid to be a little bit hard-handed with them, it doesn't matter. You can be a little bit rough, it doesn't matter, because the grains are really robust. And they will survive as long as they're kept in a clean jar with fresh milk, and you use freshly cleaned equipment. Okay, so you see the grains are left there, and these are grains that I've had for a few months. I've also shared a few grains with friends and family as well, and they always ask me, how do I start the process? So I wanted to do this video. So you're left with these grains, and these grains will go back in this jar. I don't tend to clean my jar every single time, only when it gets really mucky, just because the kefir grains will actually make sure the milk is fermented well. You're unlikely to get cross-contamination as long as you're using clean utensils, but it's a preference. If you prefer, you just clean out the jar and start the process again. So here we go. I'm just using my chopsticks because I want to ensure that every single grain is put back in my jar. I don't want to miss a grain, and you do become very protective of your grains because they become your babies. And they do a great job in helping your digestive system. So there we go. There's a little tiny bit left and I don't want to miss that out. And then what I'll do is I'll make sure these are all cleaned. I use a separate brush to clean all my equipment to ensure no cross-contamination. And then again, I'll use my milk. And because I've got more grains in here compared to the grains I started off with, I'm using a larger jar. It's usually about 2 teaspoons to a jar of milk, but this is a bit more, so I'm just using a bit more milk. And I'll top up the milk to when I think I've got a good amount. I'll stop it there, and then I'll put my cloth on top, elastic band. And I've just got this little timer that just helps me know what time I start my process. I've just changed it to the time it is now, which is 2 p.m. But you could use a notebook and write the time that you start your process, and that will be left on the counter for about 12 hours because the weather is quite warm, and it'll be ready the next day. And this one is ready to drink with milk that's been fermented by my magical kefir grains, and it's ready to drink. You can drink it just as it is. I tend to drink about 2 cups a day, and that will be usually for my breakfast. And what I usually do is I put half a banana with some frozen berries and blitz it all together and drink it for my breakfast, and it keeps me full for longer, which is fantastic for me because I do get hungry often. So thank you. Thank you for watching. Welcome to the world of kefir. It is so much better to make your own kefir. I hope you'll try it. If you have any questions, please do send a message. Thank you so much. Bye.